begin. So there's going to be a special Shavuot getaway in Jerusalem on the night of Shavuos. Invite anybody interested. At the end of the class, we'll give out these flyers. It costs 580 shekels for an adult and 300 for a student. And he told me, Yonatan, that anyone who flies tonight is 100 shekel discount. Okay. 100 shekel discount. Okay. My name is Rabbi Avrham Geller. Right? I teach in a number of yeshivas in Jerusalem. And just for the information, those who may not know, I give a lecture here every Sunday night on the Parsha of Shavuot. Right? Some of my students are here right now. Right? And everyone's invited to join us every Sunday night at 8:30. It's not instead of this class, not instead of Monday, but in addition to Monday. Okay, so tonight's topic is the bestseller. Torah is still the bestseller after all these years, right? Once came to a class and there were no Chumash. I said, "We're all the Chumash, and they're all sold out." Okay. And we're going to try to give the tamsit, the essence of the 5 books in 60 minutes. That's the goal. Don't hold me to the clock, please. Okay. So I always start off with a question. I say, what kind of book is the Torah? Is the Torah a history book? Is the Torah a story book? Is the Torah a law book? Is the Torah all the above? What's the answer? All the above. Definitely. It contains stories, it contains laws, it contains history. Let me rephrase the question. What's the main point of the Torah? Is it basically a history book, and part of the history is that God gave some laws? Or is it basically a law book, and history is background information? So you go to the secular schools in Israel, where they all teach you Tanakh, they'll tell you it's a storybook, Aesop's Fables, the Arabian Nights, the Bible. I once had a professor, he said the Bible is a very truthful book. Truthful, you can learn a lot of good things from it. It's not true. Don't take it too seriously. Don't get too inspired. It's truthful, right? But anybody who studies the Torah objectively cannot help but seeing that the Torah is basically a law book. What did God give at Sinai? 10 stories or 10 commandments? Another one, he changed it to the 10 suggestions. Have you heard the 10 suggestions, right? Nice thing to do if you feel like it, right? There's still the 10 commandments. Now, the Torah happens to be a very poor history book. Things are not necessarily in chronological order, right? We have big gaps in the middle, right? 10 generations from Adam until Noah. It's just a list of names. He gave birth to him, he gave birth to him, he gave birth to him, right? Nothing important happened in the period of over 1,000 years. From Noah to Abraham, again, 10 generations. He gave birth to him, he gave birth to him. Nothing important happened. We get to the star of the show, our father Abraham. Does anybody know how old Abraham was when the Torah begins talking about him? 80. 75, right? What happened until then? Nothing important, right? So we have the Midrash. The Midrash is the oral tradition, right? Which fills in a lot of the gaps. But the Torah happens to be a very poor history book. And our tradition is that it is basically a law book. And the stories are there for background information. Therefore, the conclusion is that every story and every detail of every story is coming to teach us a lesson. And we must ask, what lesson is it coming to teach us? When you read a novel, you don't ask, why is it this detail? Why is it that detail? He's telling you a story. He tells you a lot of details, right? But in a history book, right? In a law book, rather, if there's a story there, it must be there for a purpose. So when we study Chumash, we always ask, what does this detail teach us? What does that detail teach us? That's my first introduction. Second introduction. When a person writes a book, what do they usually write about? Things that interest them or things that don't interest them? What do you say? Things that interest them or things that don't interest them? Things that interest them, right? If it's sports, if it's music, right? People generally write books about things that interest them. Now we claim this is a book that the Almighty wrote, that God wrote. Let's try to figure out what kind of things interest God, right? The Torah begins, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. The heaven, billions of stars, galaxies, endless space. And the earth, what's the earth compared to the heaven? Like someone saying, I went to Paris, I saw the Eiffel Tower, and by my hotel room there was a little doghouse. The two things don't even go together. And the next verse begins, and the earth was, and the rest of the Torah talks about the earth. Conclusion, what interests God? The earth. Then we have the 6 days of creation. And God created the sun, the moon, the stars, the trees, the grass, the birds, the fish, the insects, the beetles, the animals, right? And then he creates one man. Again, what is one man compared to an entire planet Earth? A speck. If the rest of the Torah does not talk about the birds or the fish or the grass or the trees, it talks about man. Conclusion, what interests God in this world? Man. Okay. Adam was a great man, right? He made a mistake, he blew it, right? Right in the beginning of the Torah, we have all the basic fundamental principles. The concept of creation, the concept of free will, the concept of reward and punishment. And after Adam, there's a list of names. He gave birth to him. This does not interest God. This is fast forward. We have to make a chronology. We have to how many years they lived, right? Till we get to the second portion of the Torah. The second portion of the Torah begins with the words, and Noach was a righteous man. Tzaddik, Tamim. And the rest of the parsha deals about Noach. An entire portion dealing with Noach. Conclusion. What kind of men interest God? Righteous men! Right! And after Noah, again, a list of names, until we get to our father Avraham, and Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Moshe, right? And the rest of the Torah deals exclusively with who? The Jewish people. Conclusion. What interests God in this world? The Jewish people. Doesn't mean he doesn't care about the non-Jews. I mean, the prophet says that we have a mission in this world to be a or lagoyim, to be a light into the nations. Obviously, if God didn't care about the men, then the nations, why bother making them a light? God cares about all mankind. But the Jewish people are special. And we see this in the world around us, right? They're obsessed with the Jewish people, right? How big is the state of Israel? Thing like New Hampshire, New Jersey, right? Not the same size, right? How often is Israel on the front page of the New York Times? Very often. How often is New Hampshire? Not very often, right? The world is obsessed with the Jewish people, right? So this is the focus. Okay. So I'm going to start with each book and just give the basic concepts, right? Want more details? Every Sunday evening, 8:30, I give a class on the parsha of the week, and we go into details. Right here in the next room. So the book of Bereshis, Genesis, right? The first concept is creation of the world, right? There was a king named Ptolemy, king of Egypt, and he wanted a Greek translation of the Bible. He was afraid that the rabbis would change things. So he got 70 different rabbis. He didn't tell them about each other. And each one had to translate it, right? And they all made changes. The miracle was they all made the exact same changes. He had 70 exact copies. Like Septuagint is called. Septuagint is called. The Greek translation of the Torah. Right? And the rabbis told us some of the changes they made. And one of them was right in the beginning. Instead of right, our Torah says, Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning created God. And their translation they wrote, God created in the beginning. Now what's the difference? Because for a Jew, the fact that God created the world, we don't need the Torah to tell us that. It's obvious. You look around the world, you see design, you know there's a designer. All right? But for this king, we have to tell him God created the world. So our Torah says, in the beginning of creation of the heaven and earth, God said, let there be light. That's how Rashi explains the first verse. But for this guy, we have to tell him that, that the world was created by God. Right? The most basic proof of God, that's the Chovos HaLevavos says, right? Amnon Yitzchak says this all the time. He says, he's asking someone, were you created or did you create yourself? He says, I was created. Can you prove it logically? Let's see if we can prove it logically. Either you're created or you created yourself. So if you created yourself, before you created yourself, either you were here or you were not here, right? And if you were here, then why'd you have to create yourself? You're already here. If you're not here, had to create yourself, you weren't here. Must be, you were created, right? And the one who created you, your mother, right? Did she create herself or was she created? Same thing. She must have been created because she created herself, so either she was here or she was not here. And the one who created her, right? Now we know the process began. What's the proof the process began? Because you're here, right? How did it begin? There must have been a being that was not created, that created everything else, right? So yes, who created God? Right? So if God was created, who created the one who created God, right? There must have been a being that was not created, that created everything else. That's the logic of it, right? So the first book of Bereshit starts off with the concept of creation. The age of the universe, right? Many conflicts. They can prove it's billions of years old. They really can't, right? But even if they could, right? It would not be a question. You see, if you were creating Adam, you'd create him as an adult or as a baby. Which one? An adult, right? A baby, you die, right? Who's going to take care of him, right? You create a seed, a sapling, or a tree with fruit. A tree with fruit, right? He's got to eat. If we went back to the first day of creation, and we see Adam, we see him with his teeth, we say he's 20 years old, not one day. We checked out a tree on the first day of creation, you'd see rings. You'd say, how can you say the world is 5,000 years old? It takes more than 5,000 years for the air, for the light, for the stars to reach here, right? Light years, right? But when God created the world, He created it in full bloom. Adam was an adult. The tree was in full bloom. The light was already here, right? That's what creation assumes. And if you took a carbon-14 test on the first day of creation, you'd say it's 1 billion years old, right? There'll be no contradiction. Besides the fact that there was a flood. That's what we're getting to the next thing. The flood, if you believe in the flood, and actually almost every ancient nation in the world has a record of a flood. One of the most common myths, we don't say it's a myth, but it's one of the most common traditions that are the American Indians, the Chinese. They all have a story. There was a flood and there was a tower, right? The Gilgamesh epic, right? An old Count Cuneifer mentions a flood and a tower, right? There's evidence of it. They found the fossils of deep sea fossils on the top of Mount Everest, right? There's evidence for all over the place. Right? And if you say there was a flood and the earth was covered with water miles high for an entire year, imagine what pressure that would put on the earth. That would form carbon-14. That would form diamonds and coal, right? So anyway, that's creation. Then we have the concept of free will. Right? We have free will. Adam was given a choice, right? And he made a choice. And then there's a question of reward and punishment. Right? Right in the beginning of the Torah. Right. God tells Adam, I have a wife for you. She's beautiful. She'll be your slave. She'll do everything you want. How much does she cost? An arm and a leg. What can you get for a rib? Okay. Okay, you don't like that joke. Adam, the rabbis say that Eve was created with the rib is next to the heart, so he should love her. Right? Why was man created alone? All the creatures were created male and female. And Adam was created all alone only after... Close that door. Because Adam was created alone, so he had to realize he's lacking something. Right? He had to realize he's lacking something, and then he got a wife. Right? Before you're married, you're half a man. And after you're married, then you're really finished. Okay? Then you're really finished. Okay? Okay. How much time you said that joke? Okay. Okay. We know that men and women are equal, right? What's the proof? The proof is that a child needs a father and a child needs a mother, right? One-parent families are very problematic, whether it's father or mother. Everybody knows that, right? That's why it's such a sad story about a divorced couple, right? And there was a child about 6 years old, 5 years old, by the mother, and started crying, I want daddy, right? So she called her ex, he wants you. So he came and took her to his house. He said, I want mommy, right? And the mommy came, I want daddy, I want mommy, right? A child needs a father and a child needs a mother. They're equal, but they're different. Then we come to the flood. What's the lesson of the flood? That man is responsible for the world. Man can cause the world to be destroyed, as the generation of the flood did, and man can save the world. One family, one righteous family, and mankind is saved. That's the story of Noah. That's the lesson for all generations. For all generations, man is responsible for the world. Noah spent 120 years building the ark. Right. I said, what are you building an ark? You're hundreds of miles away from the closest body of water. Hey, you guys know how to swim, right? How long can you tread water? There's going to be a flood. There's going to be a flood. He's telling over. Warning, last warning, right? They didn't pay attention. Repent. Nobody repents, right? And then he's yelling, repent. Imagine how frustrated Noah must have been. Nobody repents, right? But at least he saved himself and his family. He saved the world, right? He saved the world. That's the lesson of the Noah. And then we get to, that's until now, world history. Now we begin Jewish history. Jewish history starting from the story of Abraham, right? And Abraham chose God, right? They say, how odd of God to choose the Jews. That's a famous anti-Semitic line. The answer is, not so odd. The Jews chose God, right? Not so odd, right? And when Abraham was a baby, he was born, there was a despot named Nimrod. And Nimrod, his stargazers told him that this baby's going to make trouble for you, right? The world had fallen into idolatry. Abraham's father, Terach, had a store that sold idols. They asked Terach, how's business? He said, thank God. Okay, thank God. And then the stargazers told him that this baby's going to make trouble for you. Kill him now. So the king said, off with his head. So his father saved his life. Right? He took a slave girl baby instead of him, and he put him in a dungeon. He woke up, he came out, and he came out of the dungeon, he saw the world. He said, where'd it come from? There must be a God. He said, brilliant mind. Where the sun went down. That can't be the sun. The moon went down. There must be a God. You can't see. A wheel doesn't turn itself. And he argued with all the wise men in his generation, right. And they left him one day. His father and the family went to the temple, and they left him minding the store. You know the joke about minding the store? Right? This guy's on his deathbed. He says, "Where's my son? He's here. Where's my daughter? He's here. Where's my wife? She's here. Who's minding the store?" They left Avraham minding the store, right? And a lady came with a sacrifice to the idol. "How old are you?" "I'm 40 years old. This idol yesterday was a tree. We chopped down the tree. Half the weeds are firewood. The other half we made an idol. You're going to bring a sacrifice to an idol that's younger than you?" He says, "You're right." So she left the sacrifice and went home. He had an idea, takes an axe and chops down all the idols in the store except for the biggest one. Puts the axe in the hand of the biggest one. Puts the sacrifice the lady put in front of it. The family can offer, "Why you chop down our idols?" "I didn't do a thing. A lady brought a sacrifice and all the idols fought over who gets it, and the biggest one took an axe and chopped it, and you're crazy, it's wood and stone." May your ears hear what your mouth is saying, it's wood and stone. How can you worship it? And they said, "That's heresy," right? They took him to King Nimrod. Nimrod, our king, our son, he believes there's an invisible God. I mean, I know I have a car. I don't know exactly how it works. I don't think there's an invisible horse pulling my car. Right. So Nimrod said to Avram, "I am God. I created the world." "Oh, shalom aleichem. Nice to meet you, right? Show us a sign of your power. Stop the sun for 1 minute. Let's show us your God." He said, "I got a better proof I'm God. I got a better proof I'm God." It's called trial by fire. You heard trial by water, right? The Christians, they would tie him up and throw him in the river. If you drown, you're right. If you don't, if you drown, I'm right. If you drown, I'm right. You're right. Good proof. Avram, I'll prove you that I'm God. I'll throw you in the furnace. If you burn, I'm God. If you don't burn, I'm not God. Is that a good proof? He said, "Go right ahead." He threw him in, and a miracle happened, and he came out without a scratch. Now, Avram had a brother named Haran. Haran wanted to cover all his bases. He said, if Avram comes out alive, I'm on his side. If not, I'm on Nimrod's side. When Avram came out on his side, I'm on Avram's side. They threw him in, and he burnt. Shishkabah, finished, right. It doesn't work if you think you're going to be saved. In any case, so Avram taught the world about God. And the deeds of the forefathers, all the stories in the book of Bereshis, is Maisa Avot Siman Labanim, the rabbis say. Everything they did, they were planting the seeds for the future Jewish people, right? For example, Avram comes to the land of Israel, there's a famine. Because of this famine, he's got to go down to Egypt. In Egypt, they take his wife and make trouble for him, and God brings plagues on Egypt, on Pharaoh, and he goes out with a lot of money. Does that sound familiar? Later on, we have the same story with Jacob, right? He's in the land of Israel. There's a famine. They go down to Egypt. The Egyptians make us slaves. God brings plagues on the Egyptians, and we go out with a lot of money. Everything the forefathers did, they were planting the seed for the future Jewish people, right? And the Rambam writes, Maimonides writes that the forefathers and the mothers never took their minds off God. No matter what they were doing, they never took their minds off God. Abraham wins a world war, gets 5 kings, right? And this guy, Malki Tzedek, the king of Salem, our tradition, he was Shem, the son of Noah, he says, "Wow, blessed is Avram to God on high, and blessed is God on high." Who should come first? Blessing to the man or blessing to God? He should bless God first, right? He forgot about God. Imagine a general who wins a world war. He comes home, there's a ticker tape parade, right? A millionaire comes to a place, everybody comes out to meet him. A Hasidic rabbi comes to a place with a lot of Hasidim, they all come out to meet him. What if he's all three? Avram was a Hasidic rabbi, had hundreds of Hasidim, thousands of Hasidim, and he was a millionaire, and he just won a world war, right? And the king says, "Wow, blessed is Avram to God." "Oh yeah, I forgot, bless God." Avram never forgot about God. The forefathers and the mothers never took their minds off God, no matter what they did. And the deeds, the book of Bereshis is planting the seed for the future Jewish people. All the things they did is for the future. Just focus on one thing. Let's talk about the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac. This is one of the most basic stories in the book of Bereshis. God tells Avraham, "Take your son, your only son, and bring him up for a burnt offering." This is called the paramount sacrifice in history. So the question is asked, throughout our history, Jews have given their lives for God. And their children's lives, which is a lot harder, right? In the Holocaust, and the Inquisitions, and the Crusades, right? Why was Avram, and they weren't as great as Avram, these Jews, and they weren't commanded directly by God as Avram was. So why is Avram's deed considered so special? So first of all, you have to understand, he put himself out of business. What was Avram's trade? What was his profession? Today we call it outreach professional. Reaching out to mankind and telling them about God, right? They believed in these idols, and the life of Polytheists, idolaters, is a very terrible life. You always have to appease the gods. And how do you appease them the best? With human sacrifice. If you lived in South America during the time of the Aztecs or the Incas, and you wanted rain, what did you do, Shlomi? What did you do? You brought a fair maiden with a flint knife and cut out her heart and sacrificed it to the rain god. What else did you do? I'm sure they were barbarians. I'm sure they felt very bad for the poor fair maiden. What can you do? We need rain. And I said, you guys got it all wrong. You don't have to appease God. God doesn't want human sacrifice. God wants hospitality. God wants kind deeds. That's what he was telling everybody. By the way, Avraham, where's his son Yitzchak? I sacrificed him. A total contradiction to everything he was preaching. That's what if he did that. But more than that, God had told Avraham that your son Yitzchak is going to be the future Jewish people. He's going to teach the world about God. If he slaughters Yitzchak, he's slaughtering Jacob. He's slaughtering Moses. He's slaughtering Maimonides. Everybody. That's what made the deed so enormous. Didn't ask any questions. Gets up early in the morning. Sacrifice. Let him oversleep one morning. Early in the morning. He travels for 3 days. Now think about it for 3 days. You tell the Buddhist, jump into the fire. And he jumps into the fire. Tell him wait 3 days and jump into the fire. It's a lot harder. Maybe he'll become a Christian. After 3 days, he comes to this spot, he ties out his his son was 37 years old, right? A little boy, all right? He ties him down, he takes a knife, he's ready to sacrifice him, and then the angel says, you passed the test with flying colors, let me make a little cut, nothing, all right? Then he sees a ram, and he slaughters a ram instead of his son. Does that make any sense? Instead of his son? You just gave me $1 million for a present. Thank you so much. How can I show my appreciation? No, I just found a bobby pin on the floor. It's not even mine. I found it on the floor. You please take this bobby pin I found on the floor instead of your $1 million. Does that make any sense? Right. God says, sacrifice your son. He's born to him at the age of 100. The future, he's ready to sacrifice him. Don't say, thank you so much. You know, God, I just found a ram here. I didn't buy it. I just found it here. Please take this ram instead of my son. Does that make any sense, right? And after he sacrifices the ram, he gets a blessing from God. Your children will be like the stars in the heaven, like the sand in the sea. Right. 1 second. When did he pass the test? When he was ready to slaughter his son, or ready to slaughter the ram? What do you say?
What was the test
When
for?
he was ready to slaughter the son, he passed the test, or only after he slaughtered the ram?
What was he tested for?
Before, when he was ready to slaughter his son, then he was ready. Right? Well, why does he only get the blessing after he slaughters the ram? He should have gotten it before. Who cares about the ram? Say there was no ram. Did he pass that? Of course. What did we need the ram for? And the commentaries explain that when Avram took this ram, he thought in his mind's eye, it's my son Yitzchak. And he cried bitter tears. How can I do this to the future Jewish people? And he said, he overcame his emotions. It's the will of God, no questions asked. And he slaughtered the ram. He said, thank you, God, for taking the ram instead of my son. And then he took the blood of the ram. In his mind's eye, it's the blood of Isaac. And he cried bitter tears. And he overcame his emotions. It's the will of God. Sprinkle the blood on the altar. Every act he did to the ram was as if he was doing it to his son. He slaughtered the ram instead of his son, literally. And that was considered in heaven as if he actually slaughtered his son. And we're going to get to the book of Leviticus. That's actually the concept of Leviticus. A Jew comes to the temple and brings an animal. And he puts his weight on the animal and says, this animal should be instead of me. And the blood of the animal should be instead of my blood. And it should be my fat. Everything they did to the animal is supposed to be, that should be me. And God is taking this animal instead of me. You were a changed person. You had tremendous emotional impact when you came to the temple with the animal sacrifice. That's the concept. Okay, we'll get to the book of Exodus. You also the movie The Ten Commandments, right? Ever read the book, right? You like the book, you love the movie, right? I say you like the movie, you love the book. Okay. The going out of Egypt. In the book of Exodus, the book of Shemos, the Jewish people become a nation. In the book of Bereshit, they were a family called the Abrahamic family. We become a nation starting off as slaves in Egypt. Right? 10 plagues, splitting of the Red Sea, revelation on Sinai. That's the book of Shemos. So the concept over here is we want to teach Pharaoh a lesson. Right? We want to teach Pharaoh a lesson. Right? And Pharaoh means the entire world. They're going to learn a lesson. God didn't have to make 10 plagues. It took a whole year. Going to make one plague, get to going, right? But in order that you shall know that I am God, you shall know there's no one like God in the midst of the world. The details, every detail, the 10 plagues, every aspect of creation. right? The 10 plagues demonstrate that when God created the world, there were no witnesses. No one actually saw God create the world. And we have our post-facto witness. Who's our post-facto witness after the fact? Adam. Adam opened up his eyes and he said, Mama, no mama. Papa, no papa. I assume Adam did not have a belly button. What's a belly button? The umbilical cord. He wasn't born from a woman. Eve probably didn't have one either, I assume. Besides that, he was a prophet. God spoke to him. So Adam began to tell his children, I know God created the world. How do you know? I opened up my eyes. I saw the world in full bloom. No father, no mother, no belly button. And God spoke to me, right? But no one actually saw it. One time in history, God wanted to demonstrate before the eyes of all mankind that He created the world. That was the 10 plagues. Every aspect of creation. God created the water, turned to blood. God created the fish died. God created the animal plague, right? The cattle plague, wild animals, right? Insects, the locusts, the lice, atmospheric conditions, the darkness, the hail. Human beings, firstborn. Can you tell them what firstborn is? We'll take 100 people, make a blood test, urine test, x-ray, brain scan, whatever you like. Can you tell them what firstborn is? No. Only his mother knows for sure, right? And God knew exactly who the firstborn was. Pretty impressive, right? Every aspect of creation was demonstrated. And this time, it was on the front page of all the newspapers. Read all about it. Plague against Egypt. Nile turns to blood. Red Sea splits. Everybody knew about it. The 10 plagues demonstrated before the eyes of all mankind that God created the world. Now, Pharaoh had free will, right? He says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. That could mean, according to Maimonides, he took away his free will as a punishment, right? A person has free will, but they can lose it, right? Adam was in the Garden of Eden. He's supposed to live forever. Everything grows on trees. Doesn't have to work for a living. And then he sinned. So, now he's got to go out of the Garden of Eden. Now he's got to work for a living, right? They lived 800 years, 900 years, they sinned. They lower the lifespan. God can limit your free will, right? It's interesting. I forgot to mention, this reminded myself, back in Bereshit, we talk about the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? What's wrong with knowledge of good and evil? Wouldn't you think it's a positive thing, no difference in good and bad? Why is eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil a sin? Okay, so God said so, right? God said don't eat from it, right? Well, how do you understand it, right? So the way I think is, good and bad is very subjective, right? It was a good lunch. It was a bad lunch. It was a good class. It was a bad class. It was a great class. What did he say? I don't know. It was a great class. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention, but it was a great class, right? Can you think of some other criteria one can base a decision on, which is more objective than good and bad? What would it be? I would say, how about true and false? True and false is objective, right? Good and bad is very subjective. Something can be objectively true and subjectively bad. For example, smoking is dangerous to your health. That's objectively true. But for a smoker, it's bad, right? For a smoker that read that smoking is dangerous to his health, you know what he did? He gave up reading, right? He gave up reading. He gave up smoking, he gave up reading, right? Or the other way around. Something can be objectively false. A drug addict is on a trip, and he's floating around in Never Ever Land, right? That's objectively fantasy. But for him, it's good, right? So before Adam ate from the tree, his decision-making process was true or false. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's true, I do it. If it's false, I don't. After he ate from the tree, is it good? Is it bad? Does it fit in with my lifestyle? Do I enjoy it, right? That's the point. And we're getting back to Pharaoh, right? Nachmanides says that God did not take away Pharaoh's free will. On the contrary, he gave him free will. Because if I bend your arm and I coerce you to do something, right? You don't have free will. There's no free will there. If Pharaoh would have given in because of the plagues, it would not have been free will. We wanted Pharaoh to a free will decision to announce to the entire world the God of Moses is the true God. My idols are not true gods, right? If he would have made that announcement, that would have changed the course of history. All the nations that worship idols, the center of idolatry, Egypt admits that there's a God of Moses that's above all. There are other gods are not gods. So he had to have free will to make that choice, right? And God gave him hardness. So Nachmanides explains, until the 5th plague, he was able to hold out. He said, no. Got the 5th plague, he would have broken down physically. So God hardened Pharaoh's heart, says Ramban means, He gave him the inner strength and fortitude to withstand the pressures of the plagues. And the plagues are pushing out in one direction, and God hardens out the other direction. He now has equilibrium, and he can choose. And he chose not to let them go. So even though he came to the recognition that God is exotic, he came to the recognition that there's a God, he would not admit it. He would not let the Jews go. In that case, says God, the only way is destroy Egypt. We'll destroy Egypt, and then the world will know there's a God. That was the point. And to see precision, right? Where the Jews went, right, there was no hail. Where the Jews went, there was no animal plague, right? Right? None of the animals of the Jews died, right? Exactly midnight, right? Not a minute later, not a minute before. The precision, that was the idea. God is precise and God is exact. And one God creates it all. You know, if the idols believed in many gods, you have the God of fire, the God of water, right? But their gods usually don't get along with each other, right? They fight with each other. Here we had the hail. In the hail was fire and water together. That means they made peace. That means this God is the God of the whole world, right? When there was the blood, the Nile turned to blood. How did the Egyptians look at it? The God of the Nile and the God of Moses had a fight, and the God of Moses beat him. That's how they looked at it, right? But how about the frogs? I mean, the frogs always come out every day, but now they came out into Pharaoh's bed, right? So who was the one who brought the frogs out yesterday, and the day before, and 100 years ago, and 1,000 years ago? It's the God of Moshe. When the miracle is within nature, it shows that the God of nature is the God of Moshe. It's one God who creates it all. That was the lesson of the going out of Egypt. It says Ramban, at the time of the Exodus, there were a number of schools of thought among the philosophers of the world. Right? How the world came into being. There was one school of thought said, there's no God. The world was always here. Right? The world was always here, right? Kadmon was always here. Who created God, right? Right? But that's difficult because the world is finite. You know, everything in this world is finite. Right? God is infinite. Everything is finite. This table is finite, right? The carpenter limited it. This building is finite. The builder limited. Planet Earth is finite. The Milky Way, it's vast, but it's finite, right? God is infinite. Right? So those who said the world was always here, right? You know that scientists believe for many years that the universe expands and contracts, never had a beginning, never has an end. They believed that for many years, until they came up with the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory proved that the universe is expanding at such a rate, it's never going to come back together, which means at one point in time it was all there, it was all together, and there was a Big Bang, and what was before that, you'll never know. The Big Bang proved the universe had a beginning. Right? You know, Albert Einstein was not an Orthodox Jew, but he believed in God from the order of the universe. He couldn't see the world as being an accident. But when they came with the Big Bang Theory, which is based on his theory of relativity, by the way, right? He had a hard time emotionally. He didn't want to be proven the world had a beginning. He actually wrote a paper to disprove the Big Bang Theory. He made a mistake in algebra, and the story goes he refused to admit his mistake until years later. He comes to America, he sees a telescope on Mount Wilson, he sees the aura beyond the cosmos, whatever that is, but there's some evidence, they say, in the universe of the Big Bang, and when he saw that, he admitted his mistake. Second school of thought Nietzsche says, as Ramban, yes, there's a God who created the world. But who says God cares what I do? Just because you believe God created the world doesn't necessarily mean He cares what I do. Right? Man, it's like the fish, do whatever you want. Third school of thought said, even if God cares what I do, but who says He intervenes? There's no such thing as He doesn't intervene in nature. Right? Maybe the laws of nature are binding on God as well. No such thing as miracles. And the fourth school of thought said, God does not communicate with human beings. God does not talk to men. No such thing as prophecy, right? We found this concept by Avraham. God tells Avraham to circumcise. And it says he circumcised in broad daylight. It says Rashi, unafraid of his neighbors. The neighbors are very upset that if you circumcise, we're going to kill you. Rashi says, why were they upset? He's going to circumcise, right? Avraham kept the entire Torah before it was given. You know that besides our tradition, it's actually a verse in the Torah. It actually says that in the Torah, in Parshas Toldos. It says, Avraham kept my kosayim mishpatai, my laws and my Torahs in plural, meaning written and oral. I even believe that Avraham wore a black hat. That's my personal opinion. Because he said he spoke to God. You think he spoke to God without a black hat? Or maybe a stripe, I don't know. But he kept the entire Torah. So why were they so upset about circumcision? He did everything else anyway, right? You know? Say people are liberals, you know, you do your thing, I do my thing, right? I'm a non-smoker, I'm a vegetarian, fine. They had no problem with that. But circumcision, he claimed that God created it, commanded him. That they had a problem with. And what would you say if I told you, the creator of the universe came into this room and had a conversation with a cockroach. Cockroach, do me a favor, have an operation.
Ridiculous, sacrilege. God's going to talk to a cockroach, right? And what's a man in their view? A big cockroach, that's all, right? We believe man is greater than the angels, but in their view, right, they deny the concept of prophecy. It says, the Ramban, the 10 plagues disproved all of these schools of thought. It showed that God created the world, because the 10 plagues demonstrated God created all of that, created the water and the animals and the human beings. It shows that God cares what man does, because he comes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. It shows that God intervenes in nature, because the miracles went against the laws of nature. It's not normal that the knives turn to blood. And finally, it shows that such a thing is prophecy, because Moses prophesied all the 10 plagues. In addition, it also proves that Moshe was a true prophet. And that subsequently proves the entire Torah. Once I've established that Moshe is a true prophet, I know the rest of the Torah is true as well. So the going out of Egypt is so basic in Judaism. It's all the basic fundamental principles of Judaism were demonstrated for the eyes of all mankind. So you'll say that was very fine for that generation that witnessed it all. How about for later generations? Says Ramban, God put all these miracles into a time capsule, so to speak, for all future generations. And that is the mitzvot. When we do the mitzvot, right, when we eat the matzah and the maror and sukkah, we're reminding ourselves, we're reliving all the events. It says in the Haggadah, you're supposed to see yourself as if you personally left Egypt. Some Sephardic Jews have a beautiful custom. Right in the middle of the passage, they say, knock on the door, knock on the camera, say, where are you going to? Where are you coming from? Mitzrayim. Where are you going to? Yerushalayim. And they put the matzahs, they march around the table, put a whole skit, right? Make it come alive. And after that came the splitting of the Red Sea. Oz Yoshir Moshe. Then did Moshe see. The spot of the Jewish people is supernatural. We're above nature. That's what the Red Sea taught us. Imagine a Martian would come from Mars and do a study of all human history except for the Jews. And based on that study, he would formulate principles. How nations rise and fall. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Persian Empire, right? And after formulating all those principles, he would now take the Jews. What would he find? They break every rule. According to any natural cause and effect, which should have long ago disappeared. Why are we still here, right? The Romans are gone, the Greeks are gone, the Persians are gone, we're still here. Right? How do we get to be above nature? It says, Oz Yasha, Oz Aleph Zayin, is Gematria 8. That is the Brit Milah, circumcision. In merit of the Brit Milah did the Red Sea split. Another place it says, Hayam Ra'av Yanos, the sea saw and ran away. What did the sea see? The bones of Joseph. When the sea saw the bones of Joseph, it ran away. Because Joseph ran away from his master's wife who tried to seduce him. What is the connection between the bones of Joseph, splitting of the Red Sea, and circumcision? These three totally unrelated things. The answer is, why are the Jewish people supernatural? Because we control our nature. The bris milah, the circumcision, symbolizes controlling the sexual urge. The strongest urge that a man has, control it. And who personified that? Joseph, 17-year-old boy, away from his family, right? And his wife tries to seduce him, and he runs away. So when we control our nature, as symbolized by the circumcision, as personified by Joseph, then the sea splits and the Jewish people are supernatural. And then we come up to the revelation on Sinai. Right? Coming to Shavuos now, right? The one event that no one ever duplicated. No one ever even claimed it, right? The Christians and the Muslims have copied so many things from Judaism. Only one thing they haven't copied, right? They don't claim that God spoke to Jesus in front of 1 million people. They don't claim that God spoke to them in front of 1 million people. They don't claim it. Why don't they claim it? Because we know you can't claim it, because if it didn't really happen, you can't claim it. You can't get away with it, right? The Holocaust, right? They say the Holocaust, it never happened, they made it up. Does anybody in his right mind believe it's possible that a person or a group of people can make up a story on the scope of the Holocaust and get the world to believe it if it didn't really happen? Where's the evidence? Where's the survivors? Where's the Jews? Where's the concentration camps? Right? And it's predicted in the book of Deuteronomy. And in the book of Deuteronomy it says that go investigate around the entire world. Did it ever happen, or does anyone make the claim that God spoke to an entire nation? It's predicted in the book of Deuteronomy that no one will make that claim. Why not? So we say, why not? Because you can't get away with it, right? The fact is that the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims all believe that God spoke at Sinai, right? I think that's the majority of mankind, right? When someone says he's a Christian, you know what he's really saying? He's saying, my ancestors were pagans. And they worshipped the crocodile god, the monkey god, this god, that god. They were wrong. The God of the Jews, who they persecuted, he was right. They were right. The Jews were right. There was a God who created the world, right? And he spoke to them, and he revealed himself in John at Sinai, right? The only thing is, he changed his mind later, right? If you ask a Catholic, how do you know you're right? Because God chose the Jews and changed his mind and chose the Catholics, right? And what did the Protestants say? He chose the Jews and changed his mind and chose the Protestants. What did the Muslims say? He chose the Jews and changed his mind and chose the Muslims. And what do we say? He chose the Jews and didn't change his mind. Okay, right? That's the only difference, right? But they all believe in all the basic concepts, right? So, it's interesting. Someone who doesn't believe in the Torah, someone who doesn't believe the stories of the Torah, they've got to come to the conclusion that it is possible to make up a story and get away with it and get the world to believe it. Because you see, the Jews did it, right? If you don't believe in the Torah, that means that the Jews got together and they made up a story, right? They got the world to believe it, right? So if so, the question is asked, how come no one else claims it? If we can get away with it, why can't it? And the author of the book of Deuteronomy, right? How can he make such a claim? No one else is going to claim it. If you could get away with it, why can't anyone else get away with it? You think you're the only one, right? You know, many claims people have made, and people have made the same claims afterwards, right? It's interesting. It's interesting. Now, what would be the greatest miracle anyone ever claimed in history? What would it be? I'll tell you. You know what the biggest claim, the biggest miracle anyone ever claimed? Let's imagine, right? That all the stories in the Torah, God forbid, never happened. We never went out of Egypt. We never split the Red Sea. We never had Revelation on Sinai. And one year, all the Jews in the world got together, had a big meeting, and they all agreed. Greatest miracle in history. Jews never agree on anything. You know, how many political parties have in the United States? 3 or 4. In Israel, there are 30 political parties. Jews never agree on anything. Right? Okay. The miracle happened. They all agreed. They agreed we're going to play a hoax on our children. We're going to make up a story about going out of Egypt. We're going to make a Passover Seder, right? Got the scenario? Comes Passover time. All over the world, children sitting around the table, we're eating matzah, we're eating maror. Why is this fight different? Because God took us out of Egypt. Egypt, we're not in Egypt now. 1,000 years ago, God took us out of Egypt. Now think for 1 minute. What's the first question the children are going to ask? What's wrong with this scenario? How is it different than what we tell our children? Do you see the point? Anybody see the point? The children are going to ask, if God took us out of Egypt 1,000 years ago, then why didn't we have a Passover Seder last year? How come grandfather had a Passover Seder? Should have had every year, right? Oh, you forgot about it, you just remembered, right? You forgot about it, you just remembered. That's not too plausible, right? Will the children tell their children the story? Do you tell your children an obvious lie? Right? Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, right? Obviously, it's an obvious lie. On the other hand, let's go back 100 years in Jewish history. That's not a long time, 100 years in Jewish history, right? 100 years ago, Jews got married at a much younger age. At the age of 16, 17, they got married. That was the custom in those days, okay? So imagine you get married at 16, 17. By the time you're 60, 70, you have great-grandchildren. Not too far-fetched if people get married 16, 17, right? Okay, we go back 100 years in Jewish history. You're sitting at the Passover Seder of your great-grandfather. And your great-grandfather tells you, I remember when I was a little boy, I sat at the Seder of my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather told me, he remembered when he was a little boy, he sat at the Seder of his great-grandfather. How many generations is that? You, your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, his father, grandfather, great-grandfather. That's 10 generations right there. And his great-grandfather told him, his great-grandfather told not that many back, that they witnessed the events of 10 plagues, splitting of the Red Sea, Revelation. We're dealing with an event and an entire nation witnessed. That's the point. If a Christian boy asks his father, why are we Christian? If he's honest, what will he answer? Many years ago, we were pagans. We worshiped the crocodile god, the moon god, the sun god. And a man came along and told us a story, the resurrection, and we believed him. And the son said, why did you believe him? Looks like an honest guy. Talk with a straight face. Right. Just, you believe him, I gotta believe him, you better believe him, right? Or else, originally the Christians were thrown to the lions by the Romans, right? Till this guy came up, Constantine, I remember his name, he had this big dream, and all of a sudden, the Holy Roman Empire, they became Christian. Historians say it wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, it wasn't an empire. They called it Holy Roman Empire. You became Christian or else. Right? And the pagans, they all became Christian, right? A lot better than what they had anyway, right? The only ones who said or else were the Jews. They gave their lives. A Muslim boy asked his father, why are we Muslim? We were worshipping God knows what in the Arabian desert. And along came Muhammad and said, God spoke to me, right? And we believed him. Why'd you believe him? Looked like an honest guy. I once asked a Muslim point blank, how do you know Muhammad was a prophet? How do you know? Muhammad said God spoke to me. Do you think Muhammad would lie? That's what he said to me. I didn't say he lied. Epileptic fit, mirage, optical illusion, right? You surrender your minds, I believe. But another reason is because Muhammad had an army. And he spread through the Middle East with the fire and the sword. He would conquer a city, chop off the heads of all the noblemen. And we said to them, do you believe Allah is God and Muhammad is Rabbi? Yes, we believe, right? Except for the Jews. The only religion that Islam tolerated were the Jews, because they didn't want to kill them, or they would die, right? Sometimes they dress nicely, sometimes not so nicely, right? A Jewish boy said, why are we Jewish? Because Moses said, God spoke to me, and we believed him. You think Moses would lie? Maybe, right? We're dealing with an event that an entire nation witnessed and handed down to their children. That's the revelation on Sinai. That's why it's so important, right? And no one else copies it. And the Torah predicts no one's going to copy that. And now we get to the book of Leviticus. What's the book of Leviticus all about? The rabbis say, Ikir Shekhinah b'tachtonim. The main place where God wants His presence felt is down below in this physical world. This physical world, this physical mundane world. Adam felt God's presence here. But you can't have God's presence when you have sin. When Adam sinned, God's presence left. Right? Here's the expression, I'm in seventh heaven. That comes from the Talmud. Talmud says there are 7 levels of heaven. So when Adam sinned, he went up 1 level, so to speak. Cain killed his brother, 2 levels. Generation of the flood, 3 levels. The Tower of Babel, 4 levels. So he's all the way up in the 7th heaven. Comes our father Avraham with his good deeds, brings us down 1 level. And Yitzchak too. When Yaakov lived, there are 7 generations. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahos, Amram, Moshe. Moshe is the 7th generation from Avraham. At Sinai, we rectified the sin of Adam. We brought God's presence back down. Comes the golden calf, back up, right? How do you keep God's presence here, right? So I forgot to mention, at the end of the book of Shemos, after the going out of Egypt, God commands us to build a mishkan, a tabernacle, a portable temple. Because at Sinai, the entire Jewish people were prophets. They all heard God speak. At the splitting of the Red Sea, the rabbis say, right, a maidservant, the lowest level, saw the Red Sea when Ezekiel the prophet didn't see. In case you don't know who Ezekiel the prophet was, he's the one who says, the heavens opened up, I saw God sitting on his throne, right? And God didn't want that to be a one-time experience. So He told us to build a tabernacle, a portable temple. For 40 years, we felt God's presence there. When we came into Israel, we set it up in a number of places, semi-permanent. There's a place called Nov and Givon and Bethel, till eventually King David brought the Ark of God to Jerusalem, and Solomon built the first temple. It stood for 410 years. The Babylonians destroyed it. 70 years later, Ezra and Nehemiah built the second temple. Stood for 420 years, till the Romans destroyed it. Today, the only thing we have left is the Kotel Maravi, the Western Wall. And I compare the Western Wall to a bottle of perfume. Take a bottle of perfume and spill out all the perfume. Now smell the bottle. Does it smell good? Does it smell good? Still a few drops left, right? We had the spirituality at the temple, right? There's letters that still exist from Roman soldiers who were stationed in the second temple, which was less than the first temple. And they claim, right, they saw when you went into the temple, it was like going into a different world. When you saw the high priest on Yom Kippur, it was like seeing an angel. Right? And it's gone. It's destroyed. It's left. But there's still a few drops left. When you go to the Kota, you can feel a little bit of the revelation on Sinai, of the splitting of the Red Sea. There's still a few drops left. So the book of Leviticus deals with how do we keep God's presence in our midst. And there are 2 parts. First part is sacrifices. And we mentioned before it's symbolic, right? You know, people don't like this concept today. Sacrifice. The conservative movement removed from their prayer book every mention of sacrifice. We're not going back to that sacrificial cult anymore. Oh no, right. They took it out. The sacrifice. Our prayer book says Musaf, the additional prayer on Shabbat and holidays. Please build the temple so we can bring the sacrifices. Right? They took that out. The sacrifice. Our ancestors. I never saw conservative Haggadah Passover. Haggadah Passover was based on Passover sacrifice. Give the base of a Karo. Build your house so we can bring the Passover sacrifice. Anyway. So I said, it's symbolic. A person, symbolically, I kill the animal in me. I take the blood of the animal, which represents my life. I go over to the altar of God, which represents the service of God. I sprinkle the blood on the altar, dedicating my life to the service of God. And I burn the fat on the altar. I'm burning the fire of godliness in the world. That's the concept. And every animal was symbolic. An ox pulls a plow. I bring an ox for a sacrifice. I will be a worker in God's field actively. A lamb, God is my shepherd. I will trust in him more passively. A goat, what's the simple character trait of a goat? Stubborn, right? You got my goat. He doesn't want to go, right? I'll be stubborn to cling to God. No matter how hard they try to pull me away, I'm clinging to God. Right? Then you have the bird. The bird, you flick off its head with your fingernail, you squeeze out its blood, you pull it open, right? And then you burn it on the altar with all the feathers. Beautiful smell to God. Ever smell burning feathers, right? Good smell or bad smell? It's a horrible smell! So first of all, the concept of this beautiful smell to God, Rabbi Hirsch says beautiful thing. What does it mean, it's beautiful smell to God? We have two senses which are very physical. Touch and taste. You've got to come into physical contact. Then we have two senses which are more spiritual. Eyesight and hearing, there's no physical contact. Smell is in the middle. There is physical contact. Particles come up to your nose. If your nose is stuffed, you can't smell, right? But those particles are very minute, and you can perceive them. When a Jew comes to the temple, he wants to elevate himself spiritually. He wants to come close to God, but those feelings are very minute, deep in his heart. And God, so to speak, smells it. He perceives those minute feelings. That's the concept. Right? Perceive. Smell. Says Rabbi Hirsch, the bird symbolizes someone who is suffering. Right? The bird, King David used the analogy, they're chasing after me like a bird, they trap me like a bird, right? We take this bird and we tear it apart, we flick off its head, we squeeze out its blood. Says Rabbi Hirsch, and even when you're suffering, with every last drop of blood in your body, you can burn the fire of godliness in the world, even when you're suffering. That's the symbolism of the bird sacrifice, right? And the Talmud says, why do we burn the feathers? Why do we take the feathers off? Because the poor man comes to the temple and he sees a rich man bring a cow, takes up half the altar. The middle-income man brings a goat or a sheep, takes a quarter of the altar. All he's got is a little bird. Take off the feathers, it's 2 by 2. He's very embarrassed. Says the Torah, you spread that bird on the altar with all the feathers, it should take up a lot of room. The poor man should not be embarrassed. That's a beautiful smell to God. That the poor man is not embarrassed. That's a beautiful smell to God. Isn't that beautiful? Right? But the second part of Leviticus deals with how to keep God's presence in our midst even when we don't have sacrifices. And the key to that is Kedoshim to you. Live a holy lifestyle. The laws of kosher are in the book of Leviticus. The laws of sexual prohibitions are in the book of Leviticus, right? The way you live your sexual life, the way you eat. And it mentions the leprosy, which comes from speaking Lashon Hara, right? People talk. What goes in your mouth, you have to watch, and what comes out of your mouth, you have to watch. Living a holy lifestyle. That's how we keep God's presence in our midst. That's the book of Leviticus. And now we go to the book of Bamidbar. Why is it called Numbers? Because a lot of census are taken. They're counting again and again, counting numbers, right? And the word the Torah uses for census is Se'u es Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Lift up the heads, and lift up the heads. It's an elevating experience. You know, in the secular world, when you have a census, or even an election for that matter, there's a little bit of meaning. Because it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You get one vote. Whether you're a college professor or whether you're a garbage man, you get one vote. And there was a time when people realized that you could give everybody a vote. Only the educated, they didn't give slaves vote, they didn't give women votes, they weren't educated, right? Say everybody gets a vote, right? You know, they say that John Kennedy won the elections because he was so handsome, all the women voted for him, right? I still remember. Vote for the Kennedy of your choice, right? Not the candidate, the Kennedy of your choice, right? But vote, right? In our concept, being counted is an elevating experience, right? Because they each, who took the census? Moses and Aaron, right? You have to make the prime minister of Israel take a census? The president of the United States, you can't get a clerk to do it, right? The Vilna Gaon writes, when we came to a prophet, any prophet, he would take one look at you and tell you all your good points, all your bad points, and what your mission to accomplish in this world is. And that was any prophet. Imagine coming to Moses and Aaron. It was an elevating experience, right? Because every one of us has a mission in this world. Did you know that until you came in this world, there's never been a human being exactly like you on planet Earth? And till the end of time, there'll never again be a human being exactly like you. Thank God. And every one of us has a mission to accomplish, right? Sometimes I think, I just happen to be born to these parents, this place, and this time. So as long as I'm here, let me enjoy myself. Wrong! You were specifically born to this parents, this place, and this time, because there's a mission. You come to them and say, Bob, you flew your mission. What mission? I know your mission. What do you think you were put here for? To eat hamburgers? To watch TV? we once brought this point down. Imagine, what would you like them to write on your tombstone, right? Consume 50,000 hamburgers, watch 100,000 TV shows. That's not all right. How about this one? Found the cure for cancer, saved 1 million lives. Is that meaningful? Definitely. How about this one? Found the cure for cancer, saved 1 million lives, so 1 million people could consume 50,000 hamburgers and watch 100,000 TV shows. We all agree that saving life is meaningful, but why? Only because life is meaningful. First, you got to find out meaning of life. So imagine an astronaut is on his way to the moon, and halfway there his radio breaks down. What does he do? He panics, right? Without that radio, without the instruction from Kate Kennedy, he's not going to make it to the moon. He's not going to make it back to the Earth. He's going to be an asteroid. So he quickly fixes the radio, and the message comes across. Do this, point this, turn this. Don't tell me what to do. Does he say that? No. He realized he has a mission, and this is his command control, right? So we all came from outer space. I arrived from outer space. My mother was a witness when I arrived, right? And we've got a radio that gives us instructions, and that is the Torah. The Torah is the instruction book for life. What does the word Torah mean literally? Hora'ah. Hora'ah means instructions, right? In Hebrew, Hora'at Shimush, how to use instructions, right? Any electrical appliance you buy, you get an instruction book. You don't read the instruction book, it breaks down, right? You buy a car, you get a driver's manual. You don't read the driver's manual. You don't change the spark plugs and the brake fluid, it breaks down. You buy a jet liner, you get a whole library. You don't read it, you're not going up there. And what is Torah the instructions for? Torat Chaim, life, instructions for living, right? What's more complicated? Flying a plane or living? How to deal with your parents, with your children, with your boss, with your worker, right? With your spouse, right? And what's the first instruction in every instruction book? Nobody knows. Read the instruction book! Study Torah! That's the first instruction, is study Torah, right? Read the instruction book and find out instructions for life, right? So that's what the Torah is. The book of Numbers deals with it. And then we have the tribe of Levi, right? Tribe of Levi are on a higher level. Divine providence. Every Jew is counted. And why are they at a higher level? Right? The Chavis Chaim, the story, the Torah says that after the golden calf, Moshe says, who's on God's side? Come to me. Me, Hashem, Elai. And the entire tribe of Levi came to him. They didn't worship the golden calf. And they put to death those who had. The Chavis Chaim was a Kohen. So a Jew comes to him and says, Rabbi, he says, tell me, are you a Kohen? No, I'm not a Kohen. Well, why aren't you a Kohen? My father's not a Kohen. Well, how come your father's not a Kohen? His father's not a Kohen. The guy came to the rabbi and said, I want you to make me a Kohen. Make you a Kohen? I can't make you a Kohen. I'll pay you $1,000, make me a Kohen. I can't make you a Kohen. $10,000. Why do you make me a Kohen so badly? Well, because my father's a Kohen, my grandfather's a Kohen, so I want to be a Kohen. In that case, for $1,000, I'll make your son a Kohen too. Anyway, Chavetz Chaim says, you're not a Kohen. Maybe you're a Levi. No, I'm not a Levi. How come you're not a Levi? My father's not a Levi. How come your father's not? He's not a Levi. What's the point? I'm a Kohen. I'm from the tribe of Levi. You know why I'm special and you're not? Because many generations ago in the desert, Moshe made a proclamation. Who's on God's side? Come to me. And my ancestor went and yours didn't. That's why I'm special and you're not. And you know what the lesson you have to learn from that is? Next time you hear somebody say, who's on God's side? Come to me. You go. Okay? And because of that, the tribe of Levi brought themselves to a higher level of my providence. A decision you make can have effect on all future generations, right? Today we have Chilonim, secular Jews. Where'd they come from? Did they come from a spaceship from Mars, right? Their parents and grandparents were religious Jews, right? What happened? Someone made a decision to stop. Someone made a decision. One of my boys in yeshiva, he went back to Toronto, and he started keeping Torah. So when his friends said they brainwashed you there in yeshiva, they really brainwashed you. Now, I don't think that's such a bad thing. Sometimes the brain needs some washing, right? In my yeshiva, we don't brainwash. We dry clean, okay? Then there's a guy who was open-minded. He was so open-minded, you know what happened? His brains fell out. Don't be too open-minded either. Anyway, right? So he said to his friends, were your great-grandparents religious? Yes. Great, right? So how come you're not religious? Because someone in your family made a decision, maybe 50 years ago, maybe longer, to stop keeping mitzvahs, right? And you're living your life according to someone else's decision, without even knowing why they made that decision, right? And you're calling me brainwashed? Right? Find out why they made the decision, right? They went to an Arachim seminar and they disproved it. I don't think that's what happened, right? They lived in a place where it's difficult in Shabbat, right? And the Chazon Ish once said, why is it, he said, when the Jews, when the generation went away from the Torah, like 100 years ago, they started becoming communists and socialists and secular Zionists, right? And the parents cried bitter tears and they prayed prayers and it didn't help. You know why? Because the children had free will and they could choose how they wanted to live. But did those tears go to waste? No. Said the Chazon Ish, God put those tears in a safe deposit, storage for the future. the children and grandchildren of those Jews who stopped keeping Torah, they grew up in kibbutzim. They don't know there's a God. They grew up in secular families. They don't have free will. They're just following their family, right? Come the tears of the great-grandparents, and many of them come to tshuva today. We see about tshuva movement. That's the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy predicts that in our generation, Jews are going to come back. I'll come to that in a minute, right? I just wanted to finish off what we're saying. What was I talking about? We're talking book of Numbers, right? So a decision you make has an effect, and the same thing the other way around. If someone decides to keep mitzvot, and to keep mitzvahs, and keep a religious Jew, that's a decision for all future generations as well. When Arachin was 10 years old, they made their first reunion. And all the people who had gone to their seminars the last 10 years came to this reunion. They had children. Some of them had 5, 6, 7 children, right? And when they came to the reunion, the first thing they said, we want to get up, we want to thank the rabbis for one thing. For these children. Had it not been for you guys, these children would never have been born, right? We expect to have 1 or 2, not 5, 6, or 7, right? A decision you make can have effect on all future. Divine providence. That is the Tribal Levi, right? And now we want to get to the book of Deuteronomy. In the book of Deuteronomy, right, the whole book takes place 7 weeks before the death of Moshe. I think 6 weeks before the death of Moshe, right? And it's got 3 parts. The first part is a history book. Moshe is telling them the history of what happened. This is the end of the 40 years. The generation before, they didn't know. He tells them about the golden calf. He tells them about this revelation on Sinai, right? And there's one subject that before they teach you that in school, they always give you an introduction. Why is this important to learn? And it's not math, and it's not English, and it's not science. What is it? History. Because why do I have to learn history? What do I care what happened 1,000 years ago? There was a Chinese emperor, and his belly was 3 meters wide, and he had 10 wives, and his name was Fu Feng Fing. Who cares, right? Why do I have to know that, right? So what they tell you in history in school? History repeats itself. You learn from history, right? But Jewish history is unique, right? I think I said it before. From Mars, you would come from Mars, and do a study of all human history except for the Jews. And then formulate history, I think I said it before, formulate principles, how nations fall and rise and fall, and take the Jews, we break every rule. We should have long ago disappeared. So the first part is history. Second part is the end of the law-giving process. What does that mean? When Moshe was on the mountain, 40 days and 40 nights, God taught him the entire Torah. The Evan Ezra says, the Reikei Moach, the empty heads, ask the question, why are you taking 40 days? He could have just downloaded it, right? And the answer is, he made an effort. He didn't sleep during those 40 days. He didn't eat during those 40 days. He's 20 days straight, right? But some people think it means he gave him the text of the 5 books. Ask the question. Here we do the story. Here we read the book. He saw the movie. Why did he hit the rock? Why did he send the spies? No, we don't have the text of the 5 books until the end of the 40 years. What God taught him on Sinai were the 613 commandments. You all know there were 613 commandments, right? Someone came into my class, Rabbi, I'm in shock. What's the matter? I always thought there was 10. I just found that 613, right? Don't get scared. They don't all apply today, right? So he says to me, Rabbi, I keep the 10 commandments. You keep Shabbos? Shabbos? I didn't know that was one of them. Did you know that was one of them, right? He said, don't murder, don't steal. Anyway, there are 613, and Moshe learned them all in 40 days, but he didn't teach them all at once. Little by little. And God spoke to Moshe saying, he taught them little. Now, the end of the 40 years before he dies, he packs it in. So the middle part of Deuteronomy are laws applying to those entering the land, as opposed to those in the desert. The laws of agricultural, the laws of the tithe, the charity laws, right? And the final part of Deuteronomy is the farewell of Moshe before he dies. And here we have an open reference to our generation. I'll end with this. Open generation to our generation. We see an open prophecy here in the book of Deuteronomy in Parshas Nitzavim. It says, when all these events will happen to you, the blessing and the curse that I gave before, is in chapter 30 of the book of Deuteronomy. You return to your hearts among all the nations that God has scattered you there. And you return until Hashem and listen to His voice, everything I command you today, with all your heart, will, soul. He's predicting there's going to be a Baal Tshuva movement. Jews are going to come back to Torah now. This 50 years ago was unbelievable, inconceivable. If you know anybody who remembers pre-World War II Europe, ask them a question. I've asked many people. In your hometown in Europe before the war, were there any families where the parents were not religious and the children were? You know what they'll tell you? Unheard of. The other way around happened all the time. The parents were religious and the children weren't, right? I mean, of course, there were some. Every family, every town had their Baal Tshuva or so, but they're very rare and far between, right? Today, Baruch Hashem, In Jerusalem alone, there must be at least 20 yeshivas for beginners, for men, for women, French, English, Spanish, Hebrew, right? And then it says more than that. It says that God will return you, have mercy, and gather you from all the nations that God scattered you there. If you be in the ends of the heaven, my rabbi said it means a colony on the moon, right? There God will gather you and He'll bring you into the land, right? This is said before we even enter the land, right? That's a prophecy. And you'll inherit it, and it'll be good to you, and it'll circumcise your heart. Doesn't mean open heart surgery, right? You'll come back to God. The fact that we'll turn to Israel, the fact that will, the Christians have prophecies too. There was a Pope named Pope Innocent IV. He lived about 400 years ago, You know that popes are infallible? They don't make mistakes. They don't have erasers on their pencils, right? They don't use Deepex. There's no delete on their computers. There really is. Okay, right. So he made a prediction. Because the Jews did not accept the Christian God, they'll be scattered around the world. Well, the time he said it, they already were scattered around the world. So it was much of a prediction, right? And they'll never return to Israel. Sounds pretty safe 400 years ago. In 1948, the Catholic Church had a theological problem. We came back. They got out about 48. They said he meant the old city of Jerusalem. We did that in 48. But in 67, we had no problem. We came back. They don't recognize Jerusalem as a capital. That's how they got it. But our Torah predicts the day is going to come. We see that today, that Jews are going to come back to Israel, and Jews are going to come back to the Torah, right? And that is unique about the Jewish people. We're coming to the holiday of Shavuos, right? Just like we had to relive the going out of Egypt, so we try to relive the revelation on Sinai, right? The one unique claim that the entire Jewish people heard God speak, and we all became prophets, and we handed that down to our children. And that's the basis of it all. So we just had a synopsis of the 5 books. I think I made it about an hour, 60 minutes, right? And for more details, right, I just want to announce also I'm available online. If you go to Beinenu, all my classes on my Sunday classes are on video or on the internet. And I also am available in H.com, Torah, the website, H.com. I have all the 5 books and all the holidays, both in written form and in audio. You can go to the Parsha of the week. It's called Lively Parsha Over You. I have everything in written form, and I have the in an audio. Okay, now we have time for. Did you get one of these, Esther? Did you get one of these, Leah? Did you get one of these? Okay, we're having a Shavuot retreat if anybody's interested. And now, anybody has any questions? Okay, so I'm inviting you Sunday evenings, 8:30. Check it out sometime. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Arguments? Okay. I rest my case. Thank you very much.